Um, but anyways, when we aren't prepared, we will fail. We will deal with trauma. Preparedness is not optional. For me, as a woman growing up in this world, as a woman, I know that I need to be prepared for certain things. And I've been through and witnessed some harrowing things. Like, thank God I dated a guy who did some stunt driving and taught me a bit, because that saved my life. Thank God I know how to deal with crisis situations because I've saved other people's lives, being the person to witness and be there for people. And, even with this situation with the school, it's like, I don't want to burden the school with all of this, but they need to have resources in. So for those who are just tuning in, this is Powered by Intuition, and I forgot to record this on YouTube because I know there's people on YouTube that are tuning in. I forgot to hit the record or stream button. But Powered by Intuition is basically about intuiting what's going on in the universe and kind of distilling that into knowledge that can impact you or affect you and support you with whatever you're going through here and now. And so I spoke about how connecting with community was what set me to be very late today. And then coming full circle to connecting with the fact that being a part of community, connecting with your community, knowing who your neighbors are, knowing who's around you, knowing who, how you can support each other in a network. And that's what community is about. And then I moved on to discussing on how I have a kid who's in school and had to deal with a swatting situation. And swatting is where people put in a false alarm and then the police still have to respond in the way that it might be real, it might not be real. And so, the school that my child goes to went on lockdown. And then, there was a recent discussion in the aftermath of that and finding out that the school actually was trying to be against having a lockdown drill. And they're like, well, we're not going to call it an active pew pew drill, saying pew pew because I am live streaming on a different platform right now. But they don't want to do a lockdown drill, which doesn't make any logical sense at all. And instead, they did something where they do like a tabletop role playing training. And I covered that tabletop role playing is for understanding character design, character development, but it doesn't give you that muscle memory that you need for a crisis situation. Now, granted, if you're doing more visualizations, that helps. But what helps even more is when you actually do the mechanisms, even if it's slower, even if it's calm, of what you need to do and how to handle a situation. You don't have someone do CPR after just talking about it. Like, that person would not have a CPR certificate. That's not how it works. So one of the things that I do when I speak about fear, and you can see my talks over on YouTube, when I talk about fear, I take people into that experience of fear, just a snippet of it, like doing an exercise that gets your heart rate up, doing something that kind of, feels very uncomfortable, and then giving you an actual tool that you've employed before to work through it. Because if you're not doing it in that moment, if you've not taken action on it, you have not learned it. And that was something that I brought up there too. It's like, if you cannot employ this, what you have learned, you have not learned it. If you can't take action on it, if you haven't utilized it, you haven't learned it. And so it's really important to be prepared for these scenarios. How are you going to handle it when stuff gets really bad, when there's a natural disaster, which there's going to be natural disasters. They've been increasing, they've been getting worse. The fires out here were horrific. And speaking of traumatizing, it's very funny that they are saying a lockdown drill would be traumatizing, but not a fire drill when a lot of people have been impacted by fires recently. Didn't make any sense. And the person was visibly flustered. And after I spoke up my piece on that, they did not want anything. They didn't even want to call on me. I just pretty much took time because I had raised my hand and they completely ignored me. And I was like, we're not going to do this. you know, I'm not their victim. They are going to listen to what I have to say because I do have the knowledge and insights to support people on this. And so, afterwards, the police officers came up to me and were like, we got to chat about the situation, but, yeah, it was very fascinating hearing that as a guise of protection, to not prepare people under the guise of protection. And that's not protection. That's what harms a lot of people. When we try to protect them from these situations, we end up doing more harm because we're not preparing them. And this is something that I learned, in a more psychologically compliant setting where if you do too much for a person and you don't let them struggle, you're not supporting them to really thrive. And that's something that a lot of parents do with their kids is it's hard to watch your child struggle. It's hard to watch them, try to figure something out and then they're getting frustrated and then they start crying and then they throw, a whole fit and then it's 15 minutes later they come out of it. But those moments of letting them figure it out, figure things out, is teaching them how to learn, is teaching them critical thinking. It's teaching them resilience. So, it's so important that it was very important for me to put into the resilience journal that I created a whole section about preparedness, a whole section about connecting with community and creating relationships, because these are important. These are part of being prepared. These are part of being resilient. These are part of getting through these situations and doing it where it's better than not being prepared. So when these things happen, sometimes we feel like it's not going to happen to us. It's never going to happen. It might. It might. So how are you going to handle that situation? How are you going to figure things out? How are you going to ensure that what's important and what's not? Are you prepared to make those decisions? That's the challenging thing. Because in a crisis situation, everything goes out the window. It's just get out with your life, oftentimes. So these are some things to think about, as harrowing as it is. These are things that we need to think about. These are things that we need to discuss. If you have a child, discuss with them hey, if this situation happens, what are you going to do? What are your thoughts about that? How do you feel about that? And with that situation at her school, it's how do you feel about that? And then letting her know, hey, if you need to leave school, you feel more comfortable knowing that I'm here available to support you. Let's do that. Let's make that happen. But I'm very proud of my child for wanting to stay. They were like, okay, I'm okay with staying. And there was a waffling. There was like, well, I want to leave later on when I didn't have the time window to go pick them up. But it's still important that they knew that I was there for them, that I didn't overreact, that I didn't panic, that I didn't cause any more stress on them from the situation, that I took it in stride and was like, I trust you to know how to navigate this situation because we've worked on this together. Like one of the things that was commented on was, oh yeah, the police, had their guns, and it wasn't anything. It was just like, oh, they have their guns out. I've never seen that before, and I had that conversation of like, well, how did you feel about that? What was your thoughts about that? And they were fine with it. They're just like, it's interesting seeing that, So I didn't put any of my stress or fear or anything else into this situation because that would cause trauma. That would cause harm, right? Like, I can handle my stuff, but my child does not need to also handle my stuff when they're dealing with this situation the most. It's impacting their school. It's impacting their moment. And so I'm not going to take center stage on that because I have my support system that can support me through that. And I have my skill set that supports me through that because I've crafted that, because I've created that, because I know these situations are happening. They've been increasing. And so having that preparedness, looking at the situations and going, what's really going on, and be as ready as you can. You're not going to be ready or prepare for everything. As much as you debrief, there will always be something that changes or that's a wrench in the works. It's not going to be the same each time. So do your best, but even if you can't afford the resources, do your best. Try to make things happen. Having community, connecting, seeing how you can provide for your community and vice versa is what really matters at the end of the day. So these are some things to really think about and consider as you go through life, as you go through these situations that are happening now and that may be happening. How are you going to stand up in the face of a crisis moment? How are you prepared to support others, those around you? Are you prepared to stand up? Are you prepared to take actions that support your life and the lives of those around you? So these are just a few things to think about. And yeah, it is it is getting late now. My apologies to my YouTube viewers. I will have to port over the recording at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. I'll try to make it happen. But thank you everybody for joining in, for viewing, and I really appreciate you all for your support, for your gifts, and I will see you next time, hopefully on time. All right. Good night, everybody.